Wearing a jacket and it starts to rain? Let's look at some of the tests we do to help you stay dry.
Hi, this is Jim and Dave from the Mag Lab again. Today we're talking about some of the testing that goes into making a good rain jacket, a waterproof, breathable rain jacket in fact. Today we're going to go over 3 of the most important tests involved in making that: water repellency, water resistance, and vapor permeability, or breathability as we like to call it.
So all textile tests are performed in a climate controlled room. So this is a room we're in right now. It's 70 degrees Fahrenheit and it's 65% relative humidity all the time. This is standard conditions for fabric testing, so labs around the world will have a room with the same conditions. Reason for this is that your fabric's behavior can be very temperature and humidity dependent, so we've standardized that and we test to the same standards that are used worldwide.
The first test we're going to show you is water repellency. This is a test that is used to measure the effectiveness of the DWR, or durable water repellent, finish on your fabric. The test we're doing is, it's a spray test where we'll put water into some funnels, it goes through some nozzles and sprays onto the garment. Yeah, this is a really important test because this is your first line of defense. When the water is coming down, the rain is falling on you, you want to make sure that you can just make it not stick to the fabric, not wet in, roll off. If you can do that, really, that is going to be the most effective defense against the water.
And now the spray is done, I'm going to take the samples and I'm going to perform 2 taps. That's actually part of the standard. And then we'll look at the fabric and we'll assess whether there are water droplets sticking to it or whether there is actually wetting out of the fabric. So in this sample you can see there are quite a few water droplets sticking, but there aren't any areas where the water droplets have spread out and are starting to soak through the fabric. So now that the spraying is complete and the sample's been tapped, we'll go ahead and we'll grade it by comparing it to a visual scale provided by the AATCC. This is a scale used to determine the rating of a fabric after running AATCC 22. We'll assess whether there are droplets of water sticking to the surface or whether there are areas where the fabric is wetting out. And we'll look at this and we'll decide, okay, this looks like it's probably a 90 because there's slight random sticking or wetting of the specimen face. So now that we've looked at water repellency, let's take a look at water resistance. So this is the test to determine your fabric's ability to hold back water that's trying to work its way through. Down here we've got water and the fabric's going to go in face down against that water. It gets clamped slowly. Now what we're going to do, we're going to increase the pressure of the water behind the fabric and we're going to watch for when that water starts to come through. The digital readout on the machine will display the pressure at which the water is actually leaking through the fabric. Then we can decide if that fabric meets our requirements or doesn't. We're starting to get a drop there. All right. Now that we've got a growing drop coming through the fabric, we stop the test and we record how much pressure this fabric is holding. So once we've tested this fabric in an original state and after laundering, we compare the results to our standards to determine if this fabric is good enough to be called waterproof.
Okay, so the next test we're going to talk about is vapor permeability, and that's what measures the breathability of a waterproof garment, or the ability to let moisture vapor out through the garment. So if you're working hard, you're starting to sweat, moisture vapor could build up, causing it to then condense and you would get wet from the inside out. We don't want that to happen. So we would use a test like this to make sure that we're going to liberate that water vapor and get it out of your garment. It's a pretty simple test. This is a heated water bath. These are standard mason jars that we're actually using, but really it's just a container. If you go over here, you can see we have the jar filled with water. We would put in a set amount of water, and we use distilled water just to make sure we don't introduce any contaminants. We have a fabric that we're testing to be used as the lid, and it's placed with the inside down, faces up. The jar would then be weighed and placed in the heated water bath for 24 hours. So along with the fabrics that are being tested, we have this. And this is kind of unique to this test. It's a control fabric, which is actually a piece of calibrated filter paper. What we'll want to do is index the fabric's breathability off of this. In other words, how well does the fabric compare to this? Because the vapor permeability rate of this paper would be equivalent to a Pinnacle, or slightly beyond even a Pinnacle waterproof breathable. So we're always aiming to do as well or better than this and then have a premier product. At the end of the 24 hours, you would then carefully weigh all of your samples. And what that's going to tell you is the amount of water lost through the fabric. We can compare our fabric samples to our control samples, and that will tell us how breathable it is in comparison to the paper. And that should give you a really good idea of how well it will perform in the field. Okay, so we've shown you kind of the three major tests that are done. And what we really want to emphasize is that all of these tests interact on each other and work together when it comes to your experience using a waterproof breathable garment in the field. The waterproofness, everybody wants to know, how waterproof it is, but really that's only part of the equation. Once it's waterproof enough to stop wind-driven rain, things like that from getting in, then really it's done. You don't have to go any higher. Sometimes if you go for more waterproofness, you end up with less breathability, and truthfully, it doesn't really matter whether you get wet from the outside or from the inside, you would still be wet. So we want to balance it and get the right and best number in each test. Once we have the results from these tests, and actually many more, we can hand those numbers to our development teams, our design teams, our materials teams, and they can use them and find the right balance between all the tests to give you the appropriate performance for the end use that you're looking for.